We've seen how important social status is to Canterlot ponies. I imagine many would want to get to know the newest princess. This would touch back on the moral from Griffin the Brush-Off, learning the difference between true and false friends.
You know, I never thought that the Cutie Mark Crusaders would be the ones to carry out this idea. So props to the show for doing something unexpected. It's just too bad that Twilight comes off as such a boring princess that...
Dude, don't do this to yourself.
What?
This isn't a Princess Twilight episode. It's a Cutie Mark Crusader story. Twilight's more of a plot piece, and you can't expect a lot of fleshing out.
But it's the only episode that's even touched on her new title affecting her everyday life. After such a strong season premiere, it's been disappointing that Twilight's life hasn't changed one bit.
Hate to break it to you, but that's this show's MO. Big life-or-death conflicts at the start, then back to tea parties and regular life-or-death experiences. It's been that way for 3 seasons.
Yet this season has featured a continuity callback in almost every episode, and it has an overarching Rainbow Connection storyline. Even this episode reminds us of that. So how is it that the writers are drawing on all these other ideas, but have all but ignored a change to the status quo?
I think a lot of people agree that Princess Twilight Sparkle hasn't done much, and the writers haven't taken full advantage of the change, yet. Let me ask you something, though. Why does this episode have to focus on Princess Twilight?
Huh?
Seems like this line of thought is making the same mistake as the Foals in this episode, getting so fixated on a title that it means ignoring the character. And as a character, Twilight really does shine here.
I hadn't thought of that. Wait, how are we even talking?
How much sleep have you gotten over the course of these videos?
Not a lot.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. Speaking of which...
Dude? Editing's more demanding than people may think. Hope you enjoyed the show, bronies of tomorrow.
We are the Cutie Mark Crusaders. On a quest to find out who we are, and we will never stop the journey.
Sometimes there's an advantage to getting these reviews out after the fact. Getting to talk to other fans and having a conversation on Tommy Oliver's reaction video offered some nice perspective. If one watches this episode for seeing Twilight as a princess, it will likely be a disappointment. Because what does being a tutor have to do with being a princess?
Nothing! Absolutely nothing!
It's a similar question to why a princess would take up full sitting. The answer is surprisingly simple. She's nice. They're nice. Twilight isn't teaching the Crusaders out of royal duty, and the quality of her teaching isn't the result of her new title. She's doing this as Twilight Sparkle, lover of learning and all-around kind pony. I'm afraid I lost sight of that on my first viewing.
Stupid! You're so stupid!
And right off the bat, Twilight is a great teacher. We see her giving the Crusaders the materials they need to learn and letting them work through it with some encouragement. A style I much prefer to Celestia's figure it out and try not to die approach. Sweetie Belle is finally getting to show off her magic, Scootaloo is learning basic mechanics, and Apple Bloom is... creating crimes against nature. Not really surprised, the CMC are learning from the Grand Spellcaster of Citrus Abominations. Much like Flight to the Finish, this feels like the Crusaders are enjoying genuine development. Until this season, they've tried getting their cutie marks by doing random things as a group, which goes against the idea of individual talent. Here, they're each learning a proper skill. It's focused, controlled, and no offense, ladies, this is what you two should have been doing from the get-go. I know you're both busy with running your own businesses, but your sisters have been skydiving off bridges. I'm just going to assume that you gave the Crusaders the idea to ask your friend for help, okay? Okay. Speaking of development, Diamond Tiara and Silver Spoon are at least adding variety to being awful. No more blank flank comments, now it's just them taunting others for being less privileged, which is typical bully behavior. If one method of attack stops hurting someone, they look for another avenue. And Tiara furthers her value by having her butler perform acrobatic feats in her place, making him the 3rd most abused assistant in modern media. Who's number 2, you ask?
And your shoes! Because how hard is it to poach a goddamn egg properly?
All this comes together as the Crusaders push back and let Tiara in on their visits with Twilight. Both Tiara and Silver Spoon pull a 180 and try to become best buds with Twilight, the Crusaders.
But now she's a princess, which makes her totally awesome. Plus, she has wings. And she's an alicorn. So we go?
Why do I feel like this scene allowed the writers to do some venting? After some shared shallowness, Tiara and Cohort get every foal in on the act while Sweetie Belle develops a catchphrase.
Relax. I got this.
Technically, the Crusaders don't have a leader. Rather, they've each taken turns as Chief Gravedigger, and this episode is Sweetie Belle's turn. Kind of fits with her voice maturing as Claire Corlett has aged several years since the show began. I guess this means it's the end of Squeaky Belle.
We could be the big shots around here for a change. They'll have to learn something too! Princess Twilight! Seems like the least we can do for the princess.
Never mind, still cute. How many adults are still digging themselves deeper by saying, I can handle this? It's not a bad message for kids, acknowledging when you're in over your head. And for this problem to grow past the limit of no return, we're going to need a lot more foals than what we've seen in Cheerilee's class so far. And that's probably the highlight of this episode. Ponyville's foal population just grew threefold. Pipsqueak makes a return, we get a nod to Futurama, and there's even Flash Sentry's Earth Pony cousin? Or little brother? Or Flash Sentry Jr.! Mr. Sentry, can you prove to me that foal isn't your illegitimate offspring? I'm not saying he is your illegitimate offspring. I'm just asking a question. A loaded question that heavily implies you've had a foal with another mare.
What?
Tell me, Princess, how do you feel about being presented out of character for the sake of an internet review? And that's why I shouldn't make headcanons. Now, here's something I don't get about this episode. The foals are completely taken in by Twilight, yet none of the adults are paying her any mind. One could argue that they're comfortable with Twilight based on past experience. I mean, she didn't insist on perks or special treatment before she became a princess. Yet having no reaction seems less about humility and more like obliviousness. It's a non-factor for any pony other than the foals. If nothing else, I think that burger shop owner should go for a promo. Hey Burger Queen, food that's fit enough for a princess and is no longer under investigation from the Food and Safety Administration. If it's good enough for royalty, it can't be a health hazard. Help the environment and buy a second burger instead of a napkin. As the Crusaders' popularity by association grows, they actually start to fall in with Diamond Tiara and neglect their skills. In a way, Diamond Tiara is serving as a dark mirror for the Crusaders, just as Suri was for Rarity and the Wonderbolts for Rainbow Dash. Until they realize that this is creating a barrier between them and their classmates. Oh, and there's a big gate in the way, too.
Twilight time! Twilight time!
Dang, those may be the creepiest kids ever. Ugh, I stand corrected. And when the dam finally breaks and the Crusaders flee back to Twilight to spill the beans, it's time to put up or shut up. 3 guesses how this turns out. Here's the weak point in terms of Twilight's role. She has been unfazed throughout this whole episode. Patient, organized, a really great teacher. This is the one place where it would have been alright for her to have a negative reaction. I don't mean that she should blow her top at foals. She has a different way of expressing frustration.
Well, guess we better get this cleaned up. Again.
But here,
Looks like Twilight time is over.
there's at least 2 ways to look at this. This story is told from the Crusaders' point of view, so there's a certain perfection that young people can project onto a mentor, much like Twilight views Celestia. The alternative is that Twilight is such a great teacher and princess that now nothing affects her. I prefer the first view, because being a good character means being imperfect. But again, this isn't really a Princess Twilight episode, and there's a danger in assigning too much meaning. Either way, it looks like the Crusaders' days are done.
Guess they didn't come here to learn after all. Well, neither did any of you.
Ooh, Princess of Sick burns. So with their social lives in tatters, the Crusaders offer one last display to thank Twilight for her time. My guess is that since they weren't under performance anxiety, they did a better job the second time around. So much so that Twilight agrees to keep teaching them. And we have another joke at Spike's expense.
Aw, come on!
Congratulations, Spike. You are the most abused assistant in modern media. And I am so sorry you have to put up with this. You are a good character. The writers just don't know what to do with you right now. All in all, Twilight Time is a much lower key episode. The situation is more social than magical, the setting is familiar, and the stakes are pretty low. Yet, maybe we needed an episode like this to keep balance and a sense of perspective. Spike, you can let go now. There's growth for the Crusaders as they learn proper skills, and we get to see a ton of new foal designs. Even Diamond Tiara and Silver Spoon have a new, if equally detestable, side to them. Seriously, getting weird now. And we get to see how good Twilight is at teaching. Though I think it'd be a mistake to assume that this is how she'd act as royalty. This is a tale taking place in comfortable territory and without any obligation. If she were to take on a magical apprentice, I think she'd go about things differently. Help? Unfortunately, this episode doesn't enjoy a lot of standout moments and is quickly forgotten. Good development, yet short on lasting impressions. I'm Silver Quill, and I'm taking Spike to therapy. This season cannot be doing his confidence any good. Maybe Dr. Wolf has a free spot.